A very good morning to all of you. I am Devendra Singh. I am Head Director CIRT Pune. And at the outset, I would like to extend my heartiest congratulations to FMM, Future Mobility Media, for taking this very timely initiative to aware people, not only the OEs, but also to the general people who are the users ultimately, about the very important theme of this FFM, that is connected autonomous electric vehicle. So, thank you very much, sir, for gathering this kind of, you can say, events or the people across India to understand the electric mobility, or you can say sustainable mobility in depth. So, before I start my talk, I would like to give a brief introduction of CIRT. We have also a booth here. You can always visit that to have a details of it, what kind of activities which CIRT does in the context of national policy making, national context. So basically CIRT is Central Institute of Road Transport. It works under Ministry of Road Transport. And we have a technical secretariat of more than 3.5 tons vehicles. So that means all AIS, all the regulations, policies, we are the custodian of that particular segment. And we are dedicated towards the all the STUs across India. And we are working on basically two fronts. One is automotive vehicle certifications, and also on the areas of road safety per se, or you can say safety in short. Few of the initiatives of CIRT are Bharat NCAP, you must be knowing it, Bharat New Car Assessment Program. So CIRT is the nodal agency to issue the certificates for new cars which are assessed. And I'm very proudly say that CIRT in the last year issued 14 star rating certificate across various 5 or 6 OEs. So this is a small initiative taken by North, and the responsibility, or they entrust this responsibility to CIRT on various aspects, like we work on, you can say, vehicle certification, auto components. We are dedicated team on cyber security also, which that area has been recently started in our division. So let us see how it turns with the course of action, how the development or technical development enhance. So the current topic today which I'm going to cover is to decarbonize the mobility, and why we want to decarbonize the mobility, to ensure or to reach to the net zero targets which were set across the globe, various countries. So when we say decarbonization, so what were the rationale behind it? So when we say rationales, like what are the main reasons, why should we decarbonize our mobility? It is very important to decarbonize the mobility. The first vertical is energy security. As we all know that, we'll see details of it. India is importing approximately 70 to 80% of its crude oil requirement from abroad for its energy requirement. And there's a high time, or you can say it's a great opportunity for India to explore various areas of renewable energy. And it's a great opportunity to, you can say, supplement a small part of that import, and we can save huge revenue, national revenue. The next parameter, why we need to decarbonize the mobility, the carbon content or the fossil fuels which we normally used in our transportation sector, which we have been using, and now it's a transition phase. So this needs to be having a lot of adverse effect on our health. So that needs to be taken care. Health concerns are a second parameter on which we need to decarbonize the mobility, and we have to reach that net zero. And the third vertical is the environmental concerns. Environmental concerns, when I'm talking about, it is GHG emissions, or the 1.5 degree centigrade, which was the target of world, that we should not reach to or allow a surface temperature of our earth more than 1.5 tons. And for that, lot many initiatives had been taken place. and the main culprit is GHGs. So this decarbonization is the main, is also affected by these three parameters, and the most important is this GHG emissions and CO2, which is, and in India, you can say around 12 to 15% is being contributed by transportation sector, this GHGs. So this is the recent data from Ministry of Statistics and Energy Statistics, which clearly says that still India is importing a lot of crude oil. And there's a unique opportunity to supplement this crude oil and add some kind of alternatives into it. For example, solar is one of the area which is being taken very aggressively. New entrepreneurs, new startups companies are coming up to enter in this area. So there's a unique opportunity to start the work in the areas of renewable energies. And second is health concerns. As we all know that India is leapfrog from BS4 to BS6 in 2020. And now we are in the stage of introducing BS7. And I'm very proudly saying that here that CIRT is a part of the BS7, all the regulations which were there made for India-specific regulations. So CIRT is the part of all the committees of various norms which are to be formulated for India-specific conditions, and that is BS7. So this is very important, and in that area is we are working. And we have seen the benefits of when we are switching from very stringent emission norms. So when we shifted from BS4 to BS6, it's a huge reduction in emissions. So this slide depicts the advantages of it. And there all the regulated emissions I'm talking about, the regulated emissions are CO, HC, NOx, PM, PN, particle numbers, and so on and so forth. But the non-regulated emissions, which doesn't have a direct implications on health of the human being. Regulated emissions are categorized those which are having impact on health. So CO2 is the GHGs, that's what we are saying. And GHGs is the main culprit behind this global warming. So this is one of the graph, if you see. Here we have tried to highlight how our global CO2 levels over a period of, you can say, 2 centuries have increased like anything. And this is alarming. If you see the graph, starting from 1850, it says that we are somewhere around 320, 300, and now we are 440 ppm of CO2. And this is a major concern. And all the climate changes you are seeing across the globe, this is the main culprit behind it. And worldwide, people are pondering how to reduce this carbon emissions. So that is why global decarbonization of the mobility came to the existence, and how to address this GHG emissions. This needs to be taken, and it needs a multi-pronged approach. Like you can't have one solution for all the things. So you have to have a multi-pronged approach to address these kind of concerns. And now when we say decarbonization of the mobility, how we can ensure that? So during this presentation, I'll try to give you a small background of it. What are the alternatives? What are the solutions? And I'll give you a very specific example of Bangalore itself, what we can do for that. So that way, we have made my presentation in a way that we can address certain challenges which we are facing day to day. So when we are saying utilization of carbon neutral fuels, so first strategy is use a low carbon fuel, right? Low carbon means which is carbonless, or carbon neutral. Carbon neutral means all biofuels are carbon neutral fuels, as we all know that. The amount of CO2 which was absorbed during the growth of the plant, it is compensated when it is burned in terms of fuel. So that's why we call it carbon neutrality, and that is addressed. Another way of decarbonizing or carbonless is electricity, but electricity comes with a renewable sources, and that is a challenge. So India took a lot of initiatives. If you see the current scenario, the current contribution of renewable energy in our total energy mix is around 210. gigawatt. And if you remember COP26, which held in Glasgow, in which our Honorable Prime Minister has coined 5 nectar elements. And those 5 nectar elements are also known as Panchamrit, right? And one of the nectar elements says that we need to generate 500 gigawatts of renewable energy by 2030. And this targets was set with something kept in mind when we are saying 2030, EV 30 at 30, that Niti Aayog report says that. That means 30% of the vehicle should be EV by 2030. So EV 30 at 30. But this, you can say, theme comes with a rider that we should ensure that the electricity should be clean. And that's why we have increased, or you can say double our capacity, so that by 2030, at least 50% of energy mix should be renewable. And the current status is we are almost 47-52, or for 48-52. 52 is fossil and 47 is your renewable energy. So we need to continue this momentum, and a lot of initiatives, solar, wind, hydro, lot many things have come, and lot more needs to be done. So this electricity, I'm sure it is very important, but in current scenario, if you say, where still we are getting electricity from 73% of coal energy, and that is alarming. And we need to reduce this coal energy to around almost nil, but it is not possible. Because I'll come, why it is not possible. When we are saying net zero means what? Whether it's zero? Answer is no, it can't be zero. Because when we categorize this as per greenhouse gas protocols worldwide which we adopt, there were 3 kinds of emissions which needs to be targeted to address net zero. So those things I'll discuss here. Third is biofuel, as I told you. Another is alternative is hydrogen. But hydrogen takes some time to build up with the infrastructure. Like there are different colors of hydrogen, but we are focused on green hydrogen. And green hydrogen only comes from electrolysis process. So this green hydrogen, we are only concerned about green hydrogen currently, which is not economical right now. Because if you want to produce a kg of hydrogen, you need to invest $9 per kg of hydrogen. That is the kind of investment is cost economics. And in India, all the hydrogen requirement, the refineries is the biggest consumer of hydrogen. So how these refinery people make this hydrogen? They make through a steam methane reforming process, SMR. The best part of SMR, 90% of the hydrogen production in India takes place with the help of SMR route only, steam methane reforming. And the advantage of it is the cost is $2 to $2.5 per kg. Whereas if I want to produce a green hydrogen, my investment is $9 per annum. So we are working on the target of making this hydrogen, green hydrogen economy by making the cost $1, 1 kg. That was the target. Or you can say $2 per kg. Then it makes sense. Commercially viable solution can only be done if we have a proper costing of it. Technology is, many technologies are there in the market. But every technology doesn't see the light of the day. But the technology which is cost economics and very promising, that will see you in the market. So to make this thing happen, a lot of electrolyzers, all these startup companies are coming up in India. We are encouraging, government is encouraging like anything to boost this kind of thing. And so that we can have ultimately a battery electric vehicle or electric vehicles and fuel cell electric vehicles ultimately. So these are the main futures for this thing, which we'll be highlighting here with some data, because whatever we are saying should be backed with some data. There are so many things available literature in this thing, but if you deep dive the data, you'll get a different kind of scenario altogether, which is very different from the things which you are normally reading on newspapers or the media. So I'll give you a small example of it in my subsequent slides also. Biofuels, I have covered some of the initiatives that government has taken. E20 is mandatory from 1st April 2025. You're all aware that all the vehicles which are coming after 1st April 2025, they have to be compliant with E20. And I'm very proud that I'm a part of this E20 project, which was initiated in 2014. and we submitted a report to the Ministry of Heavy Industry to have this kind of implementation. And after 10 years, you see all the petrol pumps now, they are having E20 dispensers. So whatever things we have to do, it should come into the market. It should be relevant to the industry. It should be relevant to the common people. Ultimately, the science only makes sense when it is benefiting the common people. That is the main thing. And we work in that agenda only. In that perspective, we work so that the common man should be benefited. And finally, which I am talking is another way of establishing e-fuels. E-fuels is normally a very new concept. If you see this, e-fuel is nothing but electrolyzers fuel, electrofuel. We call it electrofuel. And these fuels, you won't see in market right now. It is in pilot stage. The only reason is very high cost, exorbitantly very high. So the strategy goes like this. For surface and road transport, let us concentrate on battery electric vehicles, and subsequently the hydrogen infrastructure as it develops will introduce HF fuel cell electric vehicle. And for aviations and for marine applications, where you won't take chances, right? We can introduce e-fuel, which is very expensive at this time, but slowly, as the technology matures, the cost will come down, and then it makes sense. And e-fuel is, again, I'm saying it's 100% renewable. Although, I'll give you a brief schematic also, how we achieve that e-fuels also. But e-fuels doesn't make sense in road transport in the current scenario because of the very high cost. So alternatives are there, options are there, technologies are there. But which technology will come in market, the cost and its ultimate global implications will decide. Or ultimately the customer will decide based on it, on these things. So that way we have to take a conscious decision. And net zero, when we say net zero, so net zero is what? When we are talking about net zero, there are scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 emissions, which I'm not going detail of it. If I'm a company, if I'm making a product, and I'm emitting CO2, that is my scope 1 emission. Whatever electricity I'm using for producing that product, so that is my scope 2 emissions. And other things, resources, extraction of material, these comes into the scope 3 emissions. So currently when we are talking about net zero, it is only up to scope 1 and scope 2, right? So we are focusing on this. This is installed capacity. I've already covered this thing, like we are almost 210. And this could be the scenario in which we can say that when we are having various options, propulsion systems available, so which thing will go based on the maturity of the technology and availability of the resources. So ultimately, fuel cell electric would be a long-term goal which we can achieve. Currently, battery electric vehicles for city plying is absolutely a good option to go ahead. And other things, hybrid and these things are coming up very nicely. These are the different hydrogens in which the SMR route which I've talked about, it is basically if you are capturing carbon dioxide and sequester it, then it is a blue hydrogen, and only if you are capturing and not using, then it is a gray hydrogen. So SMR is a gray hydrogen which we are talking about. This is fuel cell, this is theoretical, you can always read it, but again, hydrogen and oxygen mixed together and then you can produce electricity out of it, but it's a negative energy. So it's quite an energy intensive process. So the whole world is working on this to make it economical, and we are very proudly saying that we are doing one of the interesting project in association with one of our research lab in Pune to develop, because they have expertise in developing new fuel cell technology, fuel cells, and we are utilizing safety components will be taken care by CIRT. So those kind of initiatives are also taken in our lab. These are the concept of electrofuel. Like electrofuel means we are taking hydrogen from electrolyzer, which is utilizing a renewable energy, and we are taking CO2 from all the emissions which were captured, and then we can sequester it. So when you take CO2 and hydrogen and you mix together, and it will make a syngas. Syngas is nothing but hydrogen and CO. So once you make a syngas, then with the help of Fischer-Tropsch process, you can have any kind of fuels. So you can have, you can say, gasoline, e-gasoline, e-diesel, and those things. But it's very expensive because hydrogen cost itself is $9 per kg. Other renewable energy, again, CO2 can be taken from other sources or environment. But it's very expensive. That's why we need to take a conscious decision. But why it makes sense for aviation fuel? Because when you make an aviation fuel, jet fuel, the byproduct of that jet fuel is e-diesel or e-gasoline. So in a process of e-fuel, making a jet fuel for aviation, the byproduct of that process is e-gasoline. So we can utilize this e-gasoline in our other segments. That was the whole idea. So it's a win-win situation in that case also. But again, this technology may take some time. It won't come overnight. This is some of the data, and I'll take only 5 minutes more, if you permit, so that I'll just wrap up the things in a meaningful way. This is the data which was conducted in Bangalore, in this city only. And this study was done by ITF, in which what they did are various kind of categories of vehicle they have chosen, and they try to analyze, or you can say measure, what is the total life cycle emissions which are coming out, total CO2 throughout the life cycle of the vehicle. For example, I'll focus on bus because there are various categories of vehicle, but I'll focus on only bus segment. Because for urban buses and intercity buses, which are used in Bangalore, so what is the current scenario? So those kind of studies were done by that. And if you see this figure, if a bus, or you can say intercity bus, which uses diesel, and life of a bus is taken at 12 years, so it will emit 2,236 tons of CO2 equivalent. And if the same bus, if the same bus can be converted, or you can say use on a battery electric vehicle, or if we convert a battery electric vehicle, and in a very intended policy scenario, intended policy scenario means when we are assuming a scenario of 15% of coal share and rest of by 21% by 2050. So that means we are reducing the share of coal in terms of electricity production and making more renewables into it. So that is IPS. Under that scenario, if you convert a diesel bus into your electric bus, directly you get a 1237. So almost you can say half of the CO2 reduction. Further, if you see a net zero scenario means by 2030, 44% reduction in your coal share and 11% by 2050, that is our target. Then you'll have a 1131 CO2 tons of CO2. And when you getting this all energy from renewable sources, that is the you can say our ambition or our goal to reach, that is 234 tons of CO2 only throughout the life cycle of its thing. So this is the case for electric buses which are plying on intercity routes, whose per year kilometers is around approximately 1,22,500 kilometers, which they have assumed in the data. And after this, they have analyzed, mind it, for estimating GHG emissions, worldwide, people are using GREET model. GREET model is a Argonne National Lab model, which were normally used in US-based company. But in India, its applicability is a question mark. Because the kind of inputs which were used in GREET model 1 and GREET model 2, they are quite different from Indian scenario. So the beauty of this report is they have used a India-specific IDF in which they have not only considered the fuel cycle-based CO2 emissions, when you are burning a fuel, the emissions which are coming, but also they take care of your vehicle production, during the process of vehicle production, other infrastructure when you're putting up, the kind of CO2 which are emitted. So this CO2 GHG emissions, it is a combination of fuel cycle as well as vehicle production CO2. So that's why it makes sense to have an integrated approach, to have an overall picture how this thing can be there. And if you see the scenario of fuel cell electric buses, FCV, which are also coming, they are almost similar, or you can say in sync with your 100% electric. So it is 326. For urban buses, they also conduct this study on urban buses. In this urban buses, again, they have a very staggering this thing, because in urban buses, they, instead of total kilometer per year, 1,22,000, they took 70,000. That is the normal road, total kilometers annually they cover. And based on that data, they estimated what is the CO2 of it throughout the life cycle. Again, it's a both way, fuel cell cycle as well as vehicle production assessment of the CO2. So if you see this 12-meter AC bus, which normally takes 1303 tons of CO2 oil equivalent, when you are using a BEV 100%, it drastically reduced to 163 only, right? In a best scenario, or you can say, and the net zero scenario, again, it is showing 769. So there are promising technologies, these are promising things, which may take shape of future. But the big question is, technology is available, what are the cost implications? Whether it is cost effective. So what I did is, I took the data, and I deep down this data, try to understand. If this is not the part, this is our analysis, which we did. So what I did is, I took the total fuel consumption of the buses which are plying in Bangalore, and based on their data, like they are saying urban buses are plying for 70,000 kilometers, and intercity 1,22,000 kilometers. I calculated based on the fuel efficiency, how much total liters of gasoline will be there. And from that, diesel will be consumed in a year. And by using IPCC, you can say Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change 2006 emission factors, which are normally used in GHG's estimations, I estimated total CO2 of it. And it is coming roughly same, but slightly lower than the ITF model, because ITF comprises of both vehicle manufacturing, this thing, but this emission factors, which were normally used for transportation, making a GHG inventory for transportation, they are using only fuel cycle based. So CO2 is almost similar, but when the same bus is having this kind of fuel efficiency, running on a road, and we are converting into a diesel into electric, so what is the cost? And if I add a new electric vehicle, what is the cost? Or if I take a right time at which I have to retrofit the existing diesel bus and see whether I'll get benefit or what is the ROI of it. So those kind of data I have analyzed, and we did some kind of analysis here, and the results are very promising, to be very frank. The why I'm saying promising, if you see this data, in a typical scenario, the current scenario, I'm not talking about any IPS scenario or net zero scenario, current scenario. If I currently use a diesel total equivalent kilometers, assuming the same total equivalent kilometers, and using a per unit electricity cost for commercial, which I took 8 rupees per unit here, and fuel cost 90 rupees per liter. So return on investment is only 1.9 years for urban bus 12-meter AC bus. That means today, if I want to retrofit a bus of a diesel, and if I retrofit with a, you can say, a battery, which normally new buses are coming with a very efficient battery capacities, right? Now you can run a 12-meter bus by 180 kilowatt hour battery charge electricity. And these things when we take, so it's 1.5, 1.9 for this thing, for 9 meters 2.4, 12-meter AC bus, intercity, it is 1.2. That means within a year or so, you can recover that money which is invested. And why I have chosen on a conservative side, if I retrofit a particular diesel bus with some kind of electricity retrofit kit, it is 45 to 50 lakhs approximately, because technology is maturing. I'm just completing in a minute, right? So that is the thought process, or we should think about it. For this current stage, the bus already which are covered 7 years or 8 years, we can just think about it, because the life of the vehicle is 15 meters as per your CMVR rules, but still, if you take average 12 years, so if you take this kind of thing in 8 or 9 years, we can make sense. The money will be recovered in a 1.5 year or 2 years time, and then everything is free. Like, not free, but it is win-win situation for that. And simultaneously, another advantage of it is when we are doing it, so tomorrow, based on this data, Bureau of Energy Efficiency, I have a part of the discussion with this ministry also, because we are also framing a policy for, in India, CCTS, you are aware, like carbon credit trade scheme is introduced in India, and draft guidelines are already there in the website. So tomorrow you can always put up a case. I'm not saying, you can always put up a case that, see, boss, I have offsetted this particular emissions through retrofit this thing. So kindly issue some kind of credits to us. So you can always enter into the carbon credit market also. So tomorrow you can issue, if you can say authorities get convinced, we can always ask for this carbon credit schemes. And then you can sell that product. But the important point is, it will come into the offsets mechanism, not on the compliance mechanism. Because this CCTS is having two mechanisms, compliance and offset. So transportation sector has been kept in offset mechanism. So you can voluntarily take a project, you can do the work, and you can generate some kind of green sources, and you can always credit those things for you, and you can always sell it in the market, international market. So those things are, you can say it is shaping up in next few hours, and that is the whole idea of working to make the technology viable for the customer, which is cost effective and good for environment. That is the whole idea on which we are working. And we need to introduce this thing across STUs, because we are part of STUs in the India initially, because if you see the total bus plying on road through STU segment is approximately 10 to 12%. So if we can initiate this step in that way, so it really makes sense. And that's what the message I want to give you. Thank you very much for patience learning. Thanks a lot.